So we come to the last presentation of even the last event. So I found it appropriate to ask Dave to come here. I think it was a couple of years ago. We were in The Hague, New Babylon, and also in the closing presentation, he was talking about Vegas, I think, casino, jackpots, and so. So that was really an interesting presentation. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same. It's going to be about will robots need a passport. Not sure if everyone knows David, but well, thought leader, digital identity, and digital money. I'm really proud that you are here. And well, give a big hand to Dave for his presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it is joking aside, it is a real honour to be invited back, Robert, for the last presentation of the last. I'm going to start crying, so I'm going to have to stop talking about that. The last presentation of the last event in front of people who I admire and respect. So thank you very much for the invitation. I thought I would rise to the challenge of trying to talk about ID Next and not ID Now, and where things might be going in this space next and some of the challenges that we're facing. I didn't realize there was going to be a much better presentation about AI before mine. So that's going to subvert some of the things that I would have said. But there we go. We'll see how that works out, won't we? So I wrote a few books. Did you write a few books? No. I'm joking. I'm going to resist it. But
I wrote a few white papers with the World Economic Forum. So
I just want to. You're saying AI is not going to replace people. Well, I might disagree with you. If you wake up in the middle of the night tonight and you think, well, now what would Dave have said about that? This could happen. You wake up in the middle of the night and you think, what would Dave think about that? You don't have to think anymore because Dave GPT is live and running 24/7, 365. Dave GPT is at your service any time of the day or night. So let me just leave that up there. So, please, I'm not joking, it's real. There is Dave GPT because, you know, I'm getting on a bit. I might not be able to come to these much more. My knees hurt quite a bit. So Dave GPT, probably better than me anyway. So once we've got the video working, you don't really need me for these things anymore. So anyway, progress, Robert. So I'm going to talk about finance because I want to use a specific example of an industry that's being disrupted by AI and what that means for the identity community. And so rather than talk in general, I thought it would be better to focus on a specific example. So I thought I'd use banking as the example because that's where I spend most of my time. And in order to make sense of why I'm going to say certain things, I just want to spend a couple of slides on background just to explain, you know, where we are on the finance side. So broadly speaking, if you look at the kind of eras of the evolution of finance, we're sort of roughly here. We're just coming to the end of the open. So this is what I mean in terms of strategic focus. I don't mean there's going to be no more open banking. I just mean open banking isn't the strategic focus anymore. We know what to do about open banking. We might not have done it, but we know what to do. It's not a strategic puzzle, right? We don't need to think about fintech anymore. Like, fintechs aren't going to go away, but we know what to do with fintechs. Like, banks need to cooperate with them, basically. The era that we're coming into now is the decentralized finance era. And the strategic focus is about tokenization and the whole notions of trading without clearing and settlement and blah, blah, blah. That's the strategic focus. You'll see where this goes with identity in a minute. So. And then coming past that, we've got the AI, which I label the event horizon. Because if I go to a presentation and somebody stands up there, quite often from a management consultancy, if somebody stands up and tells you, well, we know what's going to happen in 5 years' time because of AI, you know they're lying. It's completely pointless. And why would anyone say that? No one can conceivably know where we're going to be in 5. The pace of change in AI is so great, and it's so radical, so revolutionary. Nobody can possibly know where we're going to be in 5 years' time with this. So if anybody presents, so this is why I call it the event horizon. We know it's there, but we can't see past it. It's a physics analogy. Actually, it's a nuclear physics analogy, so you'd be quite familiar with it. Now, if we take that into specific technologies, I could have used any, it doesn't matter which one, any set of technology projection would do. It doesn't matter. I happened to use the McKinsey one. So what I did was I took the McKinsey technology trends for 2024, mid-year. I deleted all the rubbish about living on Mars and genetically engineering programmers and this sort of thing. And I just kept in the things about IT that were relevant to this discussion. And that gives us 4 broad trends that we have to deal with. And by far the most important, starting right now, is AI. Right after that, though, is digital identity. I think they're more closely linked than McKinsey do, and I'll show you why in a minute. So McKinsey have jumbled together digital identity and tokenization. I don't know why, management consultants. They've jumbled them together and called them trust, which none of us in this room would jumble those two things together. And the reason why, after that comes spatial computing, the metaverse that we were talking about before, and then a bit further on is quantum, which we're not going to talk about today. But you could explain quantum computing, couldn't you, sort of roughly, for the... No, because you're the only nuclear physicist in the front row. And so
I'm not, just for the record, I'm not a nuclear.
Oh, damn. So now no one knows how quantum computing works. We're stuck with it. Well, we know roughly how it works, don't we? They're quantum computers. So ordinary computers have ones and zeros, and quantum computers, there's a cat in a box, and no, there are 2 boxes with cats in that do the. It's something like that. I can't remember exactly, but the cats do things faster, don't they? And they can break codes. So okay, so we know roughly how it's working. We don't need to know more detail than that. So let's talk about artificial intelligence. Oh, sorry, no. Before we talk about artificial intelligence, I just want to make one other point. So McKinsey jumble these things up, right? But people who know about digital identity, e.g. me, don't jumble those things up. We keep them separate. So this is the model from my last book with Victoria Richardson. So as you can see there, when we're talking about the next generation infrastructure, we're talking about the kind of Web3 tokenization and asset stuff as separate from the digital identity stuff. But you need both of them in order to make a market. And the coordinating principle in that is the wallet, and we all know those wallets are going to be run by AIs and not for people. So you see how those things all slot together now. So put a pin in agents, because we're going to come back to that in a moment. The crucial point about that is agents. So now let's go, so that's the general big picture that we're working with. So now let's focus down on artificial intelligence and see why I think that's going to take us through to digital identity. So in artificial intelligence, now I'm extremely disappointed by that reaction, because do you realize how long it took me to do that? You think that was done by a computer? Honestly, you think an AI could replace? Look at this. Watch. Look at that. Fantastic. Thank you very much. You think AIs can do that? You couldn't be more wrong. That's real creativity. That's the peak. That's corporate creativity at its really, PowerPoint is the peak of corporate creativity at its finest. I think that was fantastic. I'm very disappointed with this audience. You don't see that every day. Don't pretend you do. Okay, so you made the point that there's different kinds of AI. I just want to be a bit more specific. So when I'm talking about AI and where we're going next, I don't want to talk in generalities. I want to be specific about what we're talking about. So this is the OpenAI 5-level category thing. I mean, there's any you could choose from. It doesn't matter. This happens to be OpenAI's. And it says, we start off with friends. AI is a conversational language. When you say AIs aren't going to replace people, you're completely wrong. Because even at the chat end, that's already happened. I can show you more than one study. In fact, I have one of my very favorite studies. Well, it's a Dutch audience. You can talk about these kind of things, can't you, with a Dutch audience? So I read a study that women are going to be having more sex with robots than men by 2030, which is not that long, frankly. We haven't got much longer. And there's a great case study from America of a service called Replica, where you can have a virtual boyfriend or a virtual girlfriend. And the virtual boyfriend service, they amended it. There was a problem with it because women were sending very explicit pictures of themselves to these virtual boyfriends. And so the system stopped it. And these women were so upset. And you think that's because they were morons, that they didn't know that it was a virtual boyfriend? They weren't enjoying it because it wasn't real? No. The reason why they liked the virtual boyfriends is because they're better than real boyfriends. A virtual boyfriend, for example, I'm not my opinions, I'm just telling you what the study said, right? I'm just telling you what the study and my wife said. Let me just clarify this. So the because the virtual boyfriends listen. Real men don't listen. Virtual boyfriends listen. So you could spend all day telling them, here, this is a guy conversation. I'm talking to Robert. Hey, Robert, what's wrong with the projector? It's fucked. Well, I thought the guy was going to fix it. He's got the wrong part. He's coming tomorrow. That would be my conversation with Robert. Robert wouldn't tell me how he felt about the thing being broken, or whether he'd engaged with the guy who came to fix it, or whether he felt comfortable with the guy while he. No, Robert would just say it's fucked, and that's fine by me. Virtual boyfriends, much better. In fact, when the virtual boyfriends can put up IKEA furniture, we are through, basically. It's like we're in our last days. AIs might not replace people, but they're going to replace men. We just have to face facts. Now, experts, but what's more, they're going to start mansplaining to you as well, because the AI experts are already here too. There are plenty of specific domains where the AI experts, you think I'm joking? I'm not. I'll show you the study. So there are plenty of domain-specific areas where the AI experts are all better. The one example people often use is X-rays. AIs are already much better than human doctors at looking at X-rays to spot, cancers and things like this. But they still go to a human for sort of final verification. But the step we're moving into now, and actually this is where all of the VC funding is going right now, is into agency. Remember I said put a pin in agents earlier on? So what we're looking at now is we're moving into AIs that make the decisions instead of humans. They don't make the decisions and then refer them to a human. They make the decisions instead of humans. And that's very interesting to me, because that means we have agents that can do business. And remember, I was reflecting back on the sort of banking context. Once we have agents that can make decisions, we have agents that can engage in transactions, and that makes them interesting from the banking point of view. And then we move on to AI co-workers, and eventually, I, for one, welcome our new AI overlords. So, what do I mean when I talk about moving to agency? There are some different aspects to this, but a very quick summary here basically says, it depends on the environment. So instead of restricted domains, you have an environment where the agent can learn and move around and flourish. And then we have agents which are multimodal in the sense that they can interact with you however you want to interact within that environment. And finally, those agents, when they talk about subcall decomposition, what they mean is you don't have to tell them how to solve the problem. So the agents will figure out themselves how to solve the problem. And those are already there. They may not be fantastic, but we already have the first steps in this space. Now, what are we going to do with those agents in financial services? There's lots of good studies about this. This is one from the Alan Turing Institute. I'm not just saying it out of patriotism, but the Alan Turing Institute, very good report. It tells you at super high level. But actually, you kind of know this stuff because it's been around for a while. It's kind of blown up because of ChatGPT and stuff like that. But the finance guys have been looking at AI for quite a while, right? Just like the defense guys. So in the AI, in the banking space, this is John Cryan. He used to be the CEO of Deutsche Bank. And he says, right now we employ people to behave like robots, but in the future we'll employ robots to behave like people. And that, at super high level, that's the high-level financial services view of AI. Actually, it's also the high-level financial services view of people, but let's put that to one side for the moment. Banking Administration. This is fresh off the press. I just got this last week. This is the Banking Administration Institute, the US BAI. This is their set of use cases, example use cases for AI. And I just want to illustrate a couple of them for you. So they say, for example, if we take the most powerful and revolutionary technology that any of us are going to see in our lifetimes, if we take this technology and we harness its power and we deploy it throughout the enterprise, then what we might be able to do is have slightly better credit references. Well, you're not impressed. Okay, look at the next one. Look at the next one. If we take the incredible power of artificial intelligence, like brains that are vastly more intelligent than our own, and we link them together in these superpower networks that create these almost fantastical, complex, universal brains that can solve any problem. If we do that, we might be able to have slightly fewer people in the call center. It's possible. I mean, I'm not saying for sure, but it could happen. You're still sitting on your chair. Slightly fewer people in the call center. Oh my God, unbelievable. If we take this incredible technology and we use it in order to transform the way that we do business, if we bring this technology and we make the bank work with AI as its nervous system, if we replace the brain of the bank with a super intelligent AI, we might have slightly better cross-selling opportunities. You see how they're not excited, Robert. I don't understand it. This is what the bankers are talking about. This is what they think AI is going to do to banks. Now, this doesn't tell you anything about AI, but it does tell you something about how banks think, which is not, broadly speaking. What are they actually doing with AI? Well, we all know what banks are doing with AI, basically replacing programmers, and not before time. Anybody that's worked in a bank knows that programmers are a fucking nightmare. They think they're artists. They never do what they're told. They're a bunch of clerks, and the sooner that we can replace them with AI, the better. And I, for one, couldn't care less if I never see another programmer again. You're not recording this, are you? So, can I ask, is there a lawyer here who could... Can you make them strike that from the record, please? That was, it was a personal opinion unrelated to Robert's excellent conference. And here's a real example to show what happened. So I'm not just making that up. So here's where's my Klarna results gone? Oh, my Klarna results have vanished. Baffling. Well, I've actually put the AI. The AI has got to me. Yeah, I know. I've been outwitted already. If you look at Klarna's third quarter results, well, Klarna are always going on about how they use AI for everything, right? If you look at Klarna's third quarter results, what you see is, in fact, operating expenses cut by about 2%. And what that's made up from is AI causing big reductions in, customer service costs, operations. Absolutely true. But there's also, I think, a 23% increase in IT costs, because that AI doesn't come for free. And if you're going to replace people in the call center and people doing operations support and programmers, if you're going to replace those with IT, that's a lot of expensive IT. AI burns up a lot of money, as well as energy. Okay, but my question is, Klarna are one of the most advanced companies for this. They're always in the papers talking about how they use AI. So how has their business model changed because of the presence of AI? Well, it hasn't. They're using AI to do the things that they do now, and that's kind of what banks do with AI, right? Because that's the limitations of their mental model. Let's have a different view of the future. Let's go to, it's McKinsey again. So the noted visionaries in the space of IT and finance, and these are the sort of people banks listen to, right? They don't listen to people like me. They listen to people like this. So what do they say is going to be like the vision of the future of banking using all this amazing new technology? Well, interestingly, they think that putting a robot in the... I'm not making this up. You thought I made that up for comedic purposes. No, that's a real McKinsey. So basically, in order to revolutionize banking, do you want to go to a bank branch? No, under no circumstances. When I go to the website and it says you have to phone the bank, I'm already like, oh my God, this is like living in the 1950s, I don't even want to, you think I want to go to a bank branch? And by the way, putting a robot in the bank branch doesn't make me want to go to a bank branch even more. It makes me want to stay away from the bank branch. Like, if I could send a robot to the bank branch, I might be interested. I don't want to go to a bank branch to see a robot. I mean, unless it was like doing tricks or something, or, you know, like in Alien with the knives. I'd go and watch that. But I mean, generally speaking, I don't want to see a robot in a bank branch. Although, how would you tell? I mean, I'm thinking about your presentation now. Like, how would I tell whether it was a person or not? Then it all gets a bit Blade Runner, doesn't it? Because you go into the bank and you take like a dead mouse with you and see how they react to the dead mouse. You've seen Blade Runner, right? It's like... So anyway, I don't think that's the future of bank branches. Do you, really? I think we have to look further than that. So, a few years ago, I wrote a piece for Wired, which has turned out to be right, I'm happy to say. And I'm not the only genius that thought this. Other people thought this too. If you spend even 2 minutes thinking about the impact of AI, you said about humans interacting with AI. If you spend even 2 minutes thinking about what the implications of this are, it's absolutely clear that the revolution that's coming in banking, in retail financial services, isn't banks getting AI. That doesn't make any difference. It's customers getting AI. It's customers getting AI that's going to change everything. None of these people have a strategy for their customers getting 1,000 times smarter overnight. And there's nothing they can do to stop it. Because big tech is delivering the AI into the hands of the... It doesn't matter what the banks want to do about this. Big tech is going to give that AI to everybody. And that's what changes the world. It's not banks getting AI, it's customers getting AI. I can't believe anyone doesn't... Look, if we did something interesting, maybe there'd be a human touch. But banking's not interesting. Payments aren't interesting. We don't care. Oh, no, you're absolutely right. I use the example of paying, like when you walk into a shop and you're going to pay for something, right? If you were being super intelligent, like super brain intelligent, you go and you think, okay, am I going to pay with my American Express card, which costs the shop 3%? Literally the most expensive way of paying for anything on earth. But I get air miles. So thanks all the dumb people that pay with debit cards and cash because you're giving me free air miles. Thank you very much, everybody. Or should I pay with my MasterCard where I get some cash back and I get some John Lewis vouchers? Or should I pay with my debit card and take the extra like? No sane person thinks like that. We haven't got any, like when you're standing in the shop paying, you've got other things to do, right? Bots don't. Bots don't have other things to do. A bot can do those calculations for you every single time, with you never having to think about it. It's so boring. Like, I can see how bored you are just listening to me talk about it. I mean, if you actually had to think about that stuff, you'd be catatonic. Of course it's too boring for people. Bots can do that, absolutely no problem. And it's not just for things like payments. For normal middle-class people, like this audience here, by far the most important financial decisions you ever have to make are about pensions. That's absolutely true for me. We just had a budget in the UK, right? We have a new government, a new finance minister, so they make a new budget. So my financial advisor, Keith, who is a really nice guy, my financial advisor, Keith, because we have to have a talk about your pensions and investments because of the changes in... Okay, great. Hit me with it, Keith. And then Keith says, because of the reverse flange overlap in the inverted taper relief, you need to switch the short-term capital overload from... I'm like, what? I'm an intelligent person. I'm a physicist, in fact. I'm an intelligent person, and I have literally no idea what he's talking about. He might as well be talking Mandarin Chinese. I have no idea. Like, the idea that any of you... Just checking. You're all fairly normal people. Like, the idea that any of you could make a better decision about this than even the most rudimentary bot is absolutely laughable. For 99.9% of the population, a bot would make a better decision about which savings account, which investment account, which pension than you ever would. There are some people, very well-off people, who have special circumstances, like Robert, for example. So Robert might have to work out, is his butler's dry cleaning tax deductible or not, that sort of thing. But, for most of us, this would never... So you've got decisions that are too boring for people to make, and you've got decisions that are too complicated for people to make. And in both cases, people don't want to do it anyway. So of course they're going to get bots to do this instead. Every customer is going to have a robot behind them when they're dealing with a bank. In fact, most customers will have a robot in front of them because they can't be bothered to go to the bank at all. Now, I just want to say, I am very proud of my followers on LinkedIn. My followers on LinkedIn are, broadly speaking, nerds. And when I posted this picture on LinkedIn, within a few seconds, I'd already had a message about the deliberate error in that picture. I have a special prize waiting for the first person in this room who can tell me what's the mistake on that slide. Anyone?
That's a robot.
It's not a robot. Thank you very much. Who said that? Congratulations, sir. You are a bigger nerd than anybody else in the room. Because he's absolutely right. That's not a robot. That's a space marine. In fact, it's a Blood Angel space marine. And Blood Angel space marines are augmented humans. They're not robots. And space marines have... It's a guy thing. Don't worry about it. It's a guy. It's a guy. So I have a present for you at the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. That's not a robot. That's a space marine. My mistake... an AI wouldn't have made a simple mistake like that, would it? So that's how you know it was a person that put these slides together and not a super intelligent AI. A super intelligent AI would never have made that mistake. So, don't worry, we're edging towards identity. We're getting there slowly, step by step. So if that's true, if banking and payments and financial services are boring and too complicated, and then we're going to get robots to do it for us instead, how do you sell things to a robot? Because if it's the robot that's choosing, for example, in the UK, we have a special kind of savings account called an ISA, which is like a 401k. It's a tax-free savings account. And every middle-class person every year has to sit down and work out which of these ISAs they're going to use. It takes 2 days. You've got to look through all of them, and then this one is 2.9%, and this one is 3.2%, but only on Wednesdays, and this one, if you save with your grandmother, you get double, and the other one, you can only withdraw it once a year, unless it's a leap year or there's a lunar eclipse. No person can go through this sort of stuff. It wastes 2 days of your life. A bot can do it in nanoseconds. But the question is, how would the bot choose? Because the bot doesn't care that you sponsored the rugby. A bot doesn't care that your branches are in handy locations. A bot doesn't care about your lovely logo. A bot doesn't care about, I don't know, whatever you were doing, some good thing I can't imagine what a bank might do, but you know what I mean? Like, the point is, a bot doesn't care about any of that. So what does it care about? I mean, that's a genuine question. I don't know the answer to it. If it's only going to be price, the banks are absolutely screwed. And I can show you the figures. It's absolutely... I don't know the figures from the Netherlands, but I can use the figures from the US. At a time when the interest rates in the US were 0, only 1 in 20 people with a car loan refinanced their car loan. The average person with a car loan donated, charitably, $3,500 to the US banking system. So anybody with a car loan could have gone and got a different quote and opened up a different loan and saved themselves $3,500, and they didn't. Because they're normal people like you and me. Anyway, I mean, we could do it as a challenge. You could get your laptops out right now. Everybody in this room could open up one of their savings accounts, and I guarantee you we could find you a better savings account within 2 minutes. Everybody in this room could do that, and none of you will. Because you've got other things to do. Bots don't. Please.
Don't you have to feed the
I was just making it up. You don't really have to take your grandmother for the thing. And it's not on Wednesday. So were you going to say that's not a real savings account?
No.
Oh.
I'm with Santander, by the way, so...
Oh, right, sorry. What a waste of money, sponsoring Formula One. Do you think I'd put any money in a bank that's wasting money sponsoring Formula One?
I thought for me it was the best, so okay. That's just the thing that, because you have to feed those robots. Because I think generally, you are right, but we all have our special thingies. Like you said, nobody's interested in your sponsorship for whatever, but if there is one bank that takes into account your sponsorship for whatever, maybe then that would be the best for you to choose. So, from a bank...
Yeah, remember, I wasn't expecting there to be actual bankers in the room who actually knew anything about the topic. I sort of rely on that. I rely on that for my presentation. No, you're right. But what that means is people will choose the brand of the bot, not the brand of the bank. So I don't want to get into this now because it's a different topic. But the point is, I might choose, like, let's say you chose the Greta Thunberg bot that only invests in people that do green things of some kind, you know. And you would invest in, like, the Warren Buffett bot. And, yeah, and I would invest in, like, the Elon Musk bot or so. I want the most avaricious, vicious, money-grabbing bot imaginable, you know. But other people have consciences. Could be very different for them, you know. But you're right, there are other factors which are too complicated to go into for this talk. But bear with me, because the point I want to make is that the bots will go through the APIs, which then become the front end of the bank. And so banks don't see the APIs in a competitive space at the moment because they're dragging their feet over open banking. Whereas in reality, things like the API uptime and API response time are the things that bots would care about. So, but you're right, there is an issue about the brands of the bots. So, this brings us to digital identity. Because none of that's going to work properly unless we have a digital identity infrastructure that covers everything, basically. So we get to the title of the thing. Will robots need passports? Esther said to me at lunchtime, why are you even talking about this? Of course robots will need passports. It wasn't meant for people who knew about digital identity. This is meant for everybody else. You know, of course robots will need passports. I know that, you know that. But it's more interesting to say, hey, will robots need passports? Like more thoughtful. No, of course robots will need passports. Esther knew this from the very beginning. The point is, everybody needs passports. It doesn't matter whether you're a robot or a person, like everyone is going to need online. And by the way, to your point, one of the most crucial verifiable credentials of all. This is why, you know, the argument about the, was it upstairs? The argument about the EU digital identity, what upstairs, was just getting interesting when they rang the bell just after the first punches went in. Because the most important credential in that wallet is going to be personhood. The most important credential will be this is a person. Everything else is secondary to that. Like, if you don't even know you're dealing with a person, like, if you look at the scams that are going on at the moment, what's your favorite scam at the moment? Come on, everyone has a favorite scam.
Clearview.
Clearview, that's good. That's a good answer. Can you strike that from the record, please? Yeah. Look, a lot of the scams that are going on at the moment, the scams rely on the fact you don't even know if it's a real person dealing with this sort of thing. I got a text, like I can show you on my phone, I got a text message, like supposedly coming from British Gas, saying my smart meter wasn't working, and can I follow this link and type in my meter readings? Now, I'm an intelligent person, as we established earlier on, and there was no way, there's absolutely no way I could find out whether that really came from British Gas or not. There's absolutely no way. It comes from an SMS shortcode. It says it's British Gas. So why is it me? Why is it the customer who has to do this sleuth work, like the Sherlock Holmes bullshit, to find out, is this a real text message from British Gas? That's outrageous. No wonder fraud is absolutely rampant. It should be a fundamental part of the infrastructure. Not just my identity, not just the bot's identity, but British Gas's identity and everything else's identity. The IDnext that you're talking about, when we first began these conversations, we were just talking about the identity of people, right? Now that problem's been solved. That's all taken care of now. If you're talking about ID Next, it's the identity of everything. It's not the identity of people anymore, it's everything. This is the, does anyone recognize where that diagram comes from? Oh, you're boring. That's from the Bank for International Settlements working paper on the future financial market infrastructure, otherwise known as the Finternet. They're not marketing people, they're central bankers. You get the general. This is what central bankers think the next generation infrastructure is going to look like. Here's all the stuff about tokens and blah, blah, blah. This is what's mysteriously appeared in their latest document. Remember that Venn diagram I showed you earlier on? That was just me. Now you have to listen, because this is the Bank for International Settlement. None of this is going to happen without the digital identity infrastructure that sits underneath it. We can't have the better financial market infrastructure that they want without that. So, my challenge is, you know, this is what we have to think about next. We need a model for the identity of everything, and this is a sort of, I wouldn't go as far as say prototype, but I mean this is a way to start that thinking. So what I've done here is I've said, well, Victoria and I have said, how can we think about the different kinds of identity? If everything has to an identity, how can we sort of at least begin to break that down to think about it? So what we thought was, okay, one way of doing this is to think about the difference between the identity of atoms and bits. In other words, things that exist and things that don't exist. And things that exist, we can easily break that into two parts, which is living things and dead things. That's a good enough characterization. I need an identity, I'm living. My toaster needs an identity, it's dead. At the moment, we only really think about people in that category. But of course, other living things will need IDs as well, because they're part of society. On the bits side, it's not quite the same thing, because none of this exists. So how can we break it down a little bit? Well, one way of doing it, which you touched on earlier on, was we can distinguish between things that are legal entities and things that are not legal entities. So a company is something that doesn't exist, but it's a legal entity. We haven't even solved this problem yet, by the way, either. The know your business problem is even worse than the know your customer problem, because businesses are more complicated, and you've got the issue of beneficial owners and who's allowed to make contracts and blah, blah, blah. But nonetheless, that's all we've touched so far. But there's all of this to come. There's the identity of everything else that doesn't exist, but is nonetheless has legal personhood. And then here, we've got things that are not even legal entities that will still need identities because they're going to take part in the economy. And AI is one of them. And smart, they're not smart. Contracts, they're not contracts, are the other part of it. So we can already see an outline. I'm far from getting anywhere near solving the problem, but we can already see in outline what the magnitude of the ID Next problem is. We've spent years just talking about this bit here, and we've now got to start thinking about all that there. So if you're thinking about taking over from Robert and running an interesting conference about identity, man, you've got a lot to choose from, because we've been looking at one tiny part of the problem, and we have all that to come. So I'll finish just by saying, I think we all now roughly agree broadly at super high level, in our heads, we roughly all have a similar model around digital identity. Is that right, generally speaking? So we all have this kind of three-domain view: identification, authentication, authorization. We've got the NIST identity guidelines that tell us about, this stuff, we haven't fixed it, but we sort of know roughly what we're doing there. So the next problem is, what does that mean to take that into, I mean, these are just suggestions. We haven't really started thinking about it yet. Like, how does that change? How does that model change when you bring in AIs? And again, I'm asking this because I genuinely don't know the answer. I'm just sketching out a little bit of the preliminary thinking here. How does that model change when you bring AIs in? And you had a great quote at the beginning of yours, so I'll finish with a great quote. The CEO of Replica, remember I was talking about the virtual boyfriends and girlfriends earlier on? So the CEO was being questioned about this in a podcast, very good podcast actually. And she said, and I think this is a really good example, she said, well, we're a bit like Pan Am in the 1970s. You know, we're letting people smoke on the planes, but we don't really know where any of this is going. And I kind of feel like that's where we are now. So anyway, that's ID Next. Thank you very much for listening, Robert. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Great. Thank you, David, for your presentation. So that was the last presentation of ID Next. Long day. One out of time, so but that's okay for our last event. So thank you. I would say let's have a drink, shall we?